Good morning. How fitting that we're here today on 9/11. I always feel like things stem from tragedies in our nation, and the things that are happening to not only the world in 120 countries where we have military presence, but to our very own soldiers who are the instrument of the terror that I feel we are waging against our world right now. And the things that are happened to my daughter, and still are continuing to happen to my daughter, are indicative of the leadership of our country right now, to abuse, to neglect, and to sweep under the carpet as if it didn't happen and make excuses. My daughter was 19 when she went to basic training, and she was promised travel and education and training. And if she signed up for 5 years instead of 3, she would not be deployed to a combat zone. The first thing they said to her when she got off of the bus at Fort Leonard Wood was, "Your recruiter lied to you. You're all going to Iraq and you're all going to die." She was immediately sent to Iraq out of her training. She was still 19. February of 2004 is when she deployed to Iraq. And before she left, 2 sergeants in particular were caring for her and, telling me that they were going to take care of my daughter. And now I know that they weren't really caring for her. They were grooming her to be their deployment girlfriends. What we found out since then is that these NCOs, not all of them, believe me, not all of them, but some returning sergeants are predators that are in competition to make privates, especially young, new female privates, their private in deployments. So the day she stepped foot in Kuwait, which is where they get stationed to get acclimated to being in the deployment, her platoon sergeant looked at her and he said, "Swift, why do you look at me like you want to have sex with me?" I'm putting it very nicely. That's not exactly what he said. She was so shocked. And then she walked away. She told him he'd lost his mind. And she walked away and took her shower. And the next day he got her into a Humvee alone and was talking to her about, you can keep a secret. Nobody's going to find out. And she looked at him like he'd lost his mind again and went and told her equal opportunity officer. Equal opportunity officer never did anything, didn't tell command where he said, "I will tell command," and never did. Nothing ever happened from that. So after that, a few weeks passed, and her first sergeant, who's her squad leader, he then started propositioning her for sex, and one day grabbed her by the hair and kissed her and scared the living daylights out of her. There were only 4 women in this deployment out of, I think, 90 men. And he started coercing her and acting very manipulative and coerced her into a sexual relationship. And all the while was punishing her, making her do PT for 2 hours in the mud and singling her out for special punishments because he didn't want people to find out that things were going on. And eventually, he started asking her if she'd be his girlfriend when they got back to the States. And she said, "Are you kidding me? I think you're gross and I hate you. You're the meanest man I've ever met." And from then on, the punishments got worse. And the things that happened to her, she was calling me and telling me the things that were happening to her with this sergeant, the molester, I call him. But she wasn't telling me about getting shot at. She wasn't telling me about the fear and the atrocities that she was witnessing while she was in Iraq, which is pretty interesting. I'd find out later from her different unit members. And they said, "Well, ask Suzanne. She was there. We got shot at, this time and that time." Suzanne actually drove a Humvee in Karbala doing combat patrol. That's what she was doing. So in November of 2004, I said, "Can we do something? Let me do something," because she kept calling crying. She said, "No, Mom, if you do something, I could get hurt. It's really dangerous for me to say anything or do anything." So I didn't do anything. I just sent more Rice Krispie treats and more books and more videos, whatever I could do to help assuage her terror and her fear. So she returned in February of 2005, and I said, "Can we do something now? Let's do something now." She said, "Mom, I have to redeploy with these guys in 18 months. I can't do anything. You don't know what happens to people when they tell." So she She goes about her business being an MP at Fort Lewis. She gets switched from the 66th to the 54th, and she is immediately her new sergeant, her new unit leader, starts harassing her, saying nasty, vile, sexual things to her. Finally, about a week into it, she went up to him. She said, "Sergeant, where do you want me to report to in the morning?" And he said, "In my bed naked." And there was many people there, and they all kind of looked away. She blew it. She blew her temper went, and she went and told, finally. And what happened after she told, is they were interrogated, both of them, and it was assumed that they were having a sexual relationship, even though they weren't. And he was moved to a different unit, and she was treated like a traitor for months afterwards. She would call because they were calling her all kinds of degrading names, which I'm sure you can guess what they are. We think that she has till November of 2006 before she has to redeploy to Iraq. October of 2005, she comes home and says that she has to go back in January of 2006. And I said, they can't do that. They can't send you back. You haven't had your 18 months of mandatory stabilization time. She said, they forced me to sign a waiver waiving my rights to stabilization time, and I'm going, January of 2006. So we prepare for her to go again. 3 days before her deployment, she was home. She was had brought all her stuff, put it in the garage, and her car was packed, keys in hand. She turned to me in the kitchen. She said, "Mom, I don't think I can do it." I said, "Are you serious?" She goes, "I can't do it. I can't go back." I said, well, I can't say what I said, but she went AWOL. She was AWOL for 5 months. And during that time, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder by a civilian psychologist, and we got an attorney and called the GI Rights Hotline, and we're working on getting her emotionally and mentally stable so that she could turn herself into Fort Lewis when the time was right, when she was grounded enough and healthy enough to do that. The Eugene Police Department came to my house 10:30 on a Sunday night, June 11th, 93 days ago, and pushed their way into our house with no physical warrant, and took Suzanne in handcuffs in her pajamas. We were all in our pajamas. It was 10:30 at night, and took her to Lane County Jail, where they strip searched her and orifice checked her, and denied her medical care for an abscessed tooth for 10 hours. She sat in jail for 3 days until the Fort Lewis MPs came down and got her and returned her to Fort Lewis into the care of her unit, the 54th, under the supervision of the original platoon sergeant who started coercing her and asking her to be his deployment girlfriend. She called me. She said, "Guess who's in charge of me?" I said, "Oh, hell no." And we got Senator Murray's office to intervene and get her out from under his care and a no contact order. So now she's in the 42nd. It's been 93 days, 93 days, and she's miserable. Her mental health is declining. She's probably gained 40 pounds. She just smokes and reads, and they have her doing weed and seed things, and that means cleaning weeds at the volleyball court. That means answering the phone. That means her newest job is filing AWOL reports in a different office. So I think the manipulation and the harassment is continuing. Nobody dares to sexually harass her now, but they definitely harass her in many other ways. And we wait. Our attorney told me the other day that he talked to her captain and said, "You need to prepare yourself for a court-martial," because they haven't charged Suzanne with anything yet. They did an investigation into her allegations, which took an hour. They interviewed her for an hour. And this is how, in 93 days, one interview for 1 hour by the investigating officer, and one psych eval by a military psychologist who says that Suzanne has symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, but not enough to diagnose her with it. So ever since this has happened, since Suzanne was arrested, we have heard from hundreds and hundreds of vets, men and women, that this has happened to them and it was swept under the carpet. The perpetrator went free and was not only went free, but usually is moved and promoted. Because I think that there is an institution, I have to backtrack. I believe in the military. My grandpa was a colonel. I really trusted them to take care of my daughter. And I think that they are being grossly misused, and I would like to see them be the great peacekeepers of our nation right now, not being the terrorists for an illegal, immoral occupation committing genocide in Iraq. And Suzanne is one of the prime victims of the military right now because she is not being cared for, she's not being listened to, she's not being believed. And if they go and court-martial my daughter after being victimized the way she has, I don't know if she can take it. I don't know if she can take it. I had a colonel call me one day, Colonel Catherine Miller, and talk to me about her daughter, and mother to mother, she said. And she said, well, please let me know if Suzanne is suicidal. I said, oh, thank you very much. I sure will. That's kind of what they want people to do. People that have post-traumatic stress disorder. That's why they don't medicate them, or that's why they medicate them and send them back, because they're disposable. And I will not let my daughter be disposable to the U.S. Army. So we wait until the military decides what they're going to do with my daughter and the perpetrators go free. We need to stop punishing the victims and start prosecuting the perpetrators. Thanks.